us from feeling like a community. Well, now that things have opened up a bit, let's get back to basics. As a foundation for our neighbors and family, God is a big part of bringing us together. It's time to get back to church. Uplifting, supporting, and loving neighbors that are cherished, not only now, but for eternity. Come on, you can use it. The Welcoming Committee is there every Sunday. See you soon.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Girdusky. So glad to be with you again across the Sunshine State on FM and AM, as well as our podcast and video stream, here to tackle another day of news and commentary, analysis. That's what you've come to expect, and that's what you're going to get here. So, we've got a few days now till CPAC. That'll be an interesting thing. I've never attended a CPAC before, but this will be my first. And just going to be interesting to see the temperature. People are always trying to find out what the next big thing is and who's the next political hero is going to be and what the next, idea or policy that will save the world. And it's always just amusing to me to look at these things from an anthropological perspective when I attend these events, to see these folks who want to figure out how to, take the temperature of the crowd of our society and figure out how to best exploit that temperature for power and good ideas, bad ideas, whatever. That's what you get when you get into politics. You get people trying to figure out how they can get ahead of the crowd or be a part of the crowd and use crowd passions for their own benefit. I saw this story in the Washington Post that I thought was funny. That Washington posted a story about Elon Musk, how he's being stretched too thin with so many of the commitments that he has, that they're trying to say that, they may not be able to have him succeed very well at Tesla. And I like the little clip that is on social media. It says, this is from the article, the Washington Post. It says, Tesla did not respond to repeated requests for comment. In response to email seeking comment, Musk replied only, "Give my regards to your puppet master." I thought that's a great way to deal with these unserious media outlets like the Washington Post. This is an outlet that does not have journalism first and foremost in the way they deal with things. Their job is to be a special interest mouthpiece. And they do a really good job being a PR firm for war and surveillance and destruction of family, anything good and wholesome like life, peace, family, staying together, racial harmony, healing. You don't get that with outlets like Washington Post and New York Times. These are blogs for PR firms. These are blogs, or I would say PR firms is a more accurate term, that are committed to sowing discord and aggressive, bigoted ideas into the mix if it helps folks that they are hired to take care of. One of the things that we have in our society is this obsession to not tell things honestly. And there's this desire to try to change reality with words. I talk about this a lot in different contexts, but it's one that we need to be mindful of in a whole host of different areas. Let me give you an example. There's always this desire to use words as a weapon. To say that owning a gun, for example, is a violent act, and therefore it is justifying of using preemptive violence to stop people from owning certain guns or certain ammunition or what have you. Now, that's just simply not true. To own an object is not to be inherently doing a violent thing, even if that object can have deadly consequences if used certain ways. Owning it inherently is not a violent thing. But what is violent is actually preemptively trying to stop people from owning a gun by using the threat of human beings with guns to stop certain gun owners from, or gun ownership from happening. So words matter very much. It is not violent to own a knife, a sword, a gun, etc. You may not want to. You may find guns to be disturbing. But to own one in and of itself is not inherently a violent thing. Violence requires an actual victim. This, I believe, is the cornerstone of Christian revelation. We cannot, as a collective, redefine violence to mean victimless acts so that we can justify initiating preemptive violence against such things. That would include the conscientious objector of war. It would include the Amish raw milk farmer, the drug user, the AR-15 owner, the controversial speech maker, the broken taillight urban motorist. On and on and on. There are occasions all around this world, all around our society, in which we must tell the truth and not allow people who want to sycophantically prop up a sacrificial vision of the state to redefine reality with their word games. It is not violent to have to sell raw milk. Therefore, you should not employ the preemptive violence of the state to stop it from happening. And the same goes for all kinds of nonviolent economic choices that people make. But we are addicted to aggression. We're addicted to living by the sword, and ultimately that means we'll die by the sword. Our culture is addicted to living by the sword. We cannot get away from that. We cannot get away from this desire to say, hey, I don't like something, stop it, ban it. And right now, the establishment neoliberal left, the McWoke left, they are running around viciously trying to create all kinds of heavy-handed, draconian permanent attacks against liberty. They want to gut the Supreme Court. They want to ban guns and ban ammo, ban this, ban that. They want to demonize speech, unperson people for mild commentary. Gina Carano, she basically made a comment basically just reminding people of the universal fallen nature of man, and therefore she's canceled from her appearance on a Disney television show for comments that are actually accurate, that are true, that human nature can turn into violence for any external reason. You know, but this is the world we live in. But you cannot fight this kind of monolithic authoritarian temperature by mirroring that with a equal kind of aggressive preemptive violence using response. And I am concerned that so much of whatever opposes the left would just continually mimetically absorb and do exactly what the left does. And that will ironically just enable the left to do more and more aggression. It's not the way you deal with things. We need to practice and understand social aikido, allowing folks who want to be tyrants and rulers and busybodies to fall on their own face by overexerting themselves in a way that allows them to overextend and then collapse under their own exertion. This is a social aikido principle. You can call it nonviolence, non-resistance, whatever, but it's something that we need to be talking about and practicing and doing, because that's the way you move progress forward when you're stuck with an authoritarian culture, moving in that kind of atmosphere. You don't try to double down and give a Well, you're going to be authoritarian. Well, then we're going to be tougher and ruthless, just like you. That doesn't work. It never has. It never will. It is a stupid folly of man to believe anything other than that. But yet a lot of people, I'm sure they'll be at all these political conventions, will continually try to make a case for that. Because that's what human beings do. They just keep pressing the same button over and over again, getting the same results. And we know what that is, right? Doing the same thing that's failed over and over again, expecting something different to happen. Let's take a quick break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Girdusky. We'll get to more news in just a moment.
David Girdusky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
It seems like we've become a permanent child world. In today's world, children have taken over everything about culture, and they're running it into a really nightmare situation. Now, actual children would do a better job, but these infantilized adults are the worst of both worlds of adulthood and childhood. They don't have any of the innocence and sincerity of children, but they have all the naivete and ridiculousness that comes with not being responsible for what you are talking about. Let's look at this story here. Disney Plus puts warning label ahead of the Muppet Show's episodes, cites negative depictions. This is a story in dailycaller.com, which runs some of my articles, by Elizabeth Louise. Disney has reportedly placed a disclaimer on the Muppet Show episodes for content it alleges to be offensive. 5 seasons of the show were released for streaming on Disney Plus on Friday, along with a disclaimer ahead of each episode which warns viewers of potential stereotypes and the mistreatment of people or cultures in the show, the New York Post reported. The disclaimer says, this program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience around the globe. To learn more about how stories have impacted society, visit www.disney.com/storiesmatter. I wonder where they got that branding idea from. Stories matter. Isn't that hey, wait a second. That would be cultural appropriation, Disney. You're stealing the Black Lives Matter slogan and you're trying to rip it off. That's cultural appropriation. You're saying stories matter? That's an obvious ripoff. Trying to exploit, sounds like. So basically, they're triggered by the Muppet Show. And they still think there's some money to be made in putting them on their lineup while everybody's stuck at home for the next 3 decades watching programs streaming because Fauci or whoever else the next Fauci will be would tell them to keep staying in their house for the next 3 decades. So they put, I guess they've also put content warnings on movies such as Peter Pan, The Swiss Family Robinson, and Dumbo. So those are very vicious products. And that's what, that's the level of discourse that we have today in our culture. That you are going to be triggered by watching The Muppet Show. The Muppet Show is too vicious. It says in the article, one particular episode in season 5 reportedly features the country singer Johnny Cash performing while a Confederate flag can be seen in the background. And so they have to put a disclaimer up for the Muppet Show now. Kermit the Frog, Rolf the Dog, Miss Piggy, Gonzo, and others too are too offensive, too dramatic, too intense, too bigoted to be exposed just for what they are. They need to have a safety glass around them. And they need to be repenting. Kermit the Frog needs to repent. The Muppet Show must repent. And so they've done so as best as they can, trying to find a happy medium where they can still make money off of the content while at the same time, remember the story of the Passover where you had to put the blood over the doorpost so that the angel of death would not cancel you? That's what's going on today. You had to put these disclaimers and deferences and rituals and all this stupid stuff so that the angel of death, called mimetic contagion of angry, envy-filled haters, don't attack and cancel something and make your business look bad. And so that's what you get. Muppets are now a form of kind of hate speech, apparently. Here's another story that is similarly interesting around the same line. Coca-Cola faces backlash for workplace inclusion materials encouraging employees to be, quote, to be less white. It says the whistleblower leaked the online training material, and it shows that employees were told that being less white means being, quote, less arrogant, less certain, less defensive, less ignorant, and more humble. And you thought that this wasn't a religious thing, you see. People don't want Jesus. They want a skin color or something else that they can make a big other in which they can put sinners in another camp. You see how this works? Jesus doesn't even do that with sinners, but this is their perverted, violent, bigoted version of Christianity. And so, of course, to associate a skin color and say to be less of that would mean to be less arrogant, less certain, less defensive, less ignorant, and more humble. As if those character traits are just associated with skin color. One skin color. The whole world. I mean, this is a level of brutality to the brain that it's hard to fathom. That being less arrogant, less certain, less defensive, and less ignorant, and more humble comes when you become less white. As if arrogance, certainty, defensiveness, ignorance, and a lack of humility only happened when white people showed up in the world. This is the level of asinine idiocy. And Coca-Cola, which I'm sure you're guzzling, many people do, right? Their products are everywhere and all kinds of different brands that they own. That's what they do. They think they instead of actually being to contribute to humanity, Coca-Cola should abolish like 99% of all their products. All the things that associate with seed oils, the horrible food, the corn syrup, the trash that's sickening people of all backgrounds. But they can't do that. They're just owned by the mimetic contagion of our time of stupidity and racist ideas, and they're trying to racistly patronize people who aren't white and say, oh, look, do you like us more now? We're teaching our employees to be less white. That will make them less arrogant, less certain, because arrogance and certainty and defensiveness and ignorance, that's only one race has ever done. I mean, this is the stupidity of this stuff. A giant corporation like Coca-Cola, they don't repent of their diabetes-causing products, their cancer-causing trash, their sludge, the seed oils. They can't stop that. Toxic. They'll talk about toxic whiteness. They won't talk about toxic seed oils, will they? You see? They're misdirecting your attention away from the obvious evil that they have been in part of and trying to get you to scapegoat your neighbor or scapegoat yourself to self-flagellate or whatever it is, to atone for a false misdirection. To be less ignorant would be to not ever buy anything to do with Coca-Cola again. Trash. Not because of what they've said here. That's obvious that they will say stupid stuff internally, but because their food is trash. Seed oils, corn syrup, what do they have that is of offer to us? We are humans. We're not cattle. Don't even give this trash to cattle. The toxic sludge that they produce is not fit for cattle. So let's just dismiss these pathetic people and their racist little brain-dead ideology. It's ridiculous. It's just embarrassing to see that this stuff is actually happening and people are over there, hey, this sounds like a great idea. And it's just pathetic what humans do to each other. Losing their way because of groupthink, owning their minds, making them look like a bunch of idiots. Back in a moment.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States. And
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Worldwide golfing legend Tiger Woods, who has been trying to return to pro tournaments, now undergoing surgery after a car crash. ESPN senior golf writer Bob Herrick.
He needed to be taken in an ambulance to the hospital. His agent said he's in surgery. He reported multiple injuries to his leg or legs. We don't know exactly to what extent. Obviously, it's not good no matter what.
The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department say Woods was extricated from the vehicle, popping open the windshield after the single vehicle rollover. It happened earlier this morning in the hilly roads of Rancho Palos Verdes. KABC TV chopper pilot Scott Reif flew over the scene where the mangled vehicle remained.
There's a lot to find out about this, and investigators are still looking into exactly how this happened. And then when you take into consideration the high-profile person that Tiger Woods is, there'll be a lengthy investigation and they won't miss anything.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
One thing will be interesting to see at CPAC is on Sunday when Donald Trump speaks. They have treated this guy, they've tried to. I told you back in years and years ago before he was elected that Trump was the scapegoat supreme of the political class. Not because he's innocent, but because he reveals to them what they do, right? He's a mirror to their own ugliness that they hate, and so they have to cast all their sins onto him. And they do this in various different ways, but it's because he profanes their sacred temple of power by being kind of amateurish and brutish in his language, which reveals the violence that they're all participating in. When you use ugly violence to describe the status quo of the state, it exposes the ugly violence that they're all participating in. Does that make sense? And that's why you see the media propping up, hey, look, Biden's got detention centers for children. This is wonderful. We love it. It's the same thing, basically, that Trump was doing when they were decrying it as cages. They just market it this way as, oh, it's fine. But going back to Trump, it'll be interesting to see when he does his speech on Sunday, he probably is going to double down on his claims that there was election malfeasance, right? And it'll be interesting to see because they're trying to treat him like a unperson. And I doubt that the media is going to cover that. They're probably going to try to blacklist as much of the coverage of that speech as they possibly can, given the fact that he's going to make that claim. And that has been considered. It's so interesting to see. Time Magazine did that story where they said, oh, we did have a cabal of people working together to try to coordinate everything to fortify the election. And that's why you see that same fortification happening all the time, where they coordinate everything together. That's why they all say insurrection instead of a riot. Of course, the riots with Antifa bashing in people's heads and killing people, killing African Americans, doing all kinds of horrible stuff in Seattle, horrible, disgusting stuff, violence against ordinary innocent citizens and their property. That was all summer of love. It was racial justice protests. But this violent situation at the Capitol, that was a planned insurrection. And it's just instead of just a ridiculous crowd riot that got out of hand, that was violent. But they all use the same language. Every media outlet, they all use the same exact framing for these stories. That's part of that good old fortification Time Magazine wanted to brag to you about, to try to show you, look how tough and powerful we are. See, we want to scare you. Look at us. Look, see, we can just come out in the open and you can't do anything about it. Look how powerful our giant corporations and media outlet oligarchs are. Look what we can do. We're going to brag in front of your face to rub it in. But that is what you'll see with we already see it when anybody mentions disputes about the election. Okay. YouTube has said any video that even says anything, they'll attack. So you can't say anything, You can dispute every election in the world, but not this one. You can dispute what happened with Caesar in Rome. Who killed Caesar? You can dispute what happened with JFK. You can dispute what happened with Area 51. You can dispute any election. You can dispute the election in any Middle Eastern country, but you cannot dispute this election because why? Political folks who have power have told them this is what you're going to do. Shut your mouth and know your role. And that's exactly what the social media oligarchs and the media outlets do. They do exactly the fortification that's required to keep their little powerful position going. So that's what they'll say. They'll say, no, it's a lie. That's what they always say. And if you read these news stories when they cover Trump's claims about the election, they'll say his false claims. Now that is a journalistic malpractice, because a true journalist would say unproven, right? You could say that, unproven. But to say false is a claim on reality that they don't know. They also say no courts, it failed. Their challenge to the election failed on all the courts, as if it was resoundingly defeated in the court. No, it wasn't. They never went to trial for any of them. They were defeated on technicalities like standing. So the jury's still out on all the facts. You could say that the Trump group has not made a strong claim about what they're saying. They haven't proven it. That's one thing. So you can say unproven, allegations. You could say without much of any real evidence, but to say totally false, not allowed to be talked about, will be deleted off the face of the earth. Anybody who says anything will be deleted off the face of the earth. That is absolutely ridiculous. But here we're going to see this happen again in a big way when Trump probably mentions that in the speech he's going to do on Sunday at CPAC in Orlando. JustTheNews.com says, here's a story here. YouTube removes new interview with President Trump citing presidential election integrity policy. YouTube's new election integrity policy forbids uploads of new videos alleging widespread election fraud in 2020, though the policy does not apply to earlier videos in which Democrats alleged that Trump stole the 2016 election by way of Russian collusion. This is pure politics. It's fascistic. It's disgusting. It's an attack on everything we know about a free society. To be so blatant and biased and to try to gaslight people in such an aggressive way, it will only serve to demonize, and it will only serve to polarize people into more and more hardline political ideology. It would do everything to turn people away from a message like what I'm suggesting of peace and get people to say, I've had it. There's just no place. We need to have strong, centralized government to respond to the bullying of these giant corporations and government. So it's just a road that goes nowhere but nowhere good. But it's one that we must be mindful of, and a very top of the line. It should be the top story. Is this cheapening of discourse that's happening so fast. We're normalizing such illiberal disregard for thought and diversity of speech and so forth. I want to play this clip from a previous time back in the 80s. On the Morton Downey show, I believe is the name, of a clip from a young Ron Paul, just to kind of show you the discourse back then that people engaged in.
Ask me why we still finance the communists. Ask me why 70% of the military budget is spent overseas. Ask me why the good airplanes are overseas and the lousy airplanes are not here. The lousy airplanes are in the Air National Guard. I would say clean out the State Department, spend more money on our national defense, have an anti-communist policy. Don't sign these treaties with the Soviets. Don't extend loans to the Soviet Union. And not to fight these wars with the funds we raise from the illegal drugs. So under the libertarian society, no, we don't fight Vietnam wars. We don't fight the Korean wars. We fight wars to defend America, and we stand for America.
Baby.
We stand for freedom.
We get high.
You are excuse me.
Yes, we get high. We get high, Mark. We get high on the ideas of freedom. We get high because freedom and liberty is worth defending. Yeah, let me answer that. Just say no. Assume the responsibility of yourself. Don't assume the government makes your decision. You say no. Don't say the government do it. You say no. You have the courage to do it.
I think I detect his voice changing. Maybe his cojones are getting small. No No's Against Drugs. It's a program geared primarily down to kindergarten. We do it through music, a cartoon character called Little No-No, the drug fighter. No one else in the United States is giving us a hand.
Is a tyrannical approach to solving a social medical problem, and we endorse the idea of voluntarism and self-responsibility, family, friends, and churches to solve problems, rather than saying some monolithic government is going to make you take care of yourself and be a better person. It's a preposterous notion. It never worked. It never will. The government can't make you a better person. It can't make you follow good habits. Why don't they put you on a diet? You're a little overweight, and I think you'd be in better health.
You're a little short down. You want to make president. You're a little short down.
I'm tired of people like you.
Have the government do that.
I'm tired of people like you using the Constitution to do whatever you want to do. If we legalize drugs, we're giving up on the whole country.
So, that was, a taste of a whole nother era back then. But it's interesting to see how the similarities, but also differences. Of course, the similarities to our time is that Ron Paul has been saying the same message all along, and that the crowd was stupidly saying, just say no, to a line that he said that we shouldn't be fighting wars that are funded with trade of illegal drugs, referring to some of the things that the government has done in the past that's come out. And of course, a stupefied mimetic crowd, they can only respond to just say no, like pro wrestling. See, politics has always been pro wrestling. In moments like that, you can see it a little bit more obviously, right? But usually it buttons it up and it kind of hides it with decorum. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump was such a threat, because Trump represented that kind of revelatory pro wrestling experience that you see in that, and that you heard of that Morton clip that's been shared all over social media in the last day or so, as people reflected on how fired up Ron Paul was and consistent he was, and how right he was, and how political discourse was a little bit more blatant and open in some ways, a little bit more honest in its ignorant pro wrestling type, passions and screams and so forth. But Donald Trump brings that crowd, that kind of screaming and hollering pro wrestling stuff. He brought that into the decorum of DC in 2016, and it shattered their little reality, because it was always like, yeah, you can do that on a talk show, but you don't bring that into the discourse between politicians like he did with Schumer and Pelosi and so forth and the Republicans. And so that's an unforgivable sin that he did. But it's just interesting to see, Ron Paul's message: assume your own responsibility, assume your own responsibility. Stop believing that the state will take care of you. People listen to that and they say, oh, that's too naive, that's too radical. But this past year has shown you that it is exactly the truth. That people who would say, oh, that's libertarian, that's too deep, that's too radical about ending the drug war. Well, what do you have now? You have a government that, because they have the power to use, coercion to stop economic choices for this or that, now they can use that to stop your restaurant, to shut down this, to force you to have government decreed medicine, and then they want you to have papers, please, to show what medicine you have. Do you have your 50th dose? Do you have your 2000th dose this year? All this stuff they want to do. That all comes from the crowd stupidly rejecting voices like Ron Paul for decades and decades and decades. They can't hear. They just want to react to stimulus on a gut dumb level. Just say no, they're screaming as the dude's saying stuff that was true then and it's true now. And more people have, woken up to that here in 2021. But, if we had done this a lot sooner, maybe we would not have the situation we have today. If we did not have government trying to take care of us, he said to the guy who was wanting to keep government policing and nanny state laws against drug use, he said, well, why doesn't the government put you on a diet? And that triggered him, But the point is that whole presumption that the government is going to take care of you and they will make the choices for you, that is behind everything. That's behind what conservatives say, oh, we got to have government crack down on fentanyl. Oh, goodness. Oh, my gosh. We're going to have them. Oh, you presume that government can do what it cannot do, which is to manage your life for you. They can't. At what point will people stop, tuning their ears out to this obvious reality? Because I hear this deafness on the left and the right. I see it. Well, we need government to help us with child, care. The government's going to force companies to provide mandated child care, mandate government mandates for child care. Well, we need government to mandate a wage, $15. How about $18? How about $40? $50 minimum wage, whatever it is. We need government to mandate this or that. Government should mandate pro-family policies or something. All of this stuff is based in that same naive idolatry that you can see the crowd being swept up in that clip. And it takes courage to be the one guy who stands in front of a crowd screaming blindly and stick to your principles and tell the truth and tell it with conviction, tell it with charisma, tell it with full body, soul sincerity, and do it in a way that can convert people away from the spirit of the crowd and towards the personhood principles that we espouse. Let's take a quick break and return after this short break. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com in the meantime, or drop us a comment on our live stream on video on Facebook or YouTube.
Hello, this is David Girdusky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved two people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com NMLSID.com. You're in charge now. NMLSID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Feeling lonely? You don't need to. There are friends in your community looking to be part of your life. Where are they? At your local church, of course. It's time to start getting back together for support, love, and friendship. There's no better place to do that than at your church. Make a plan this Sunday to be at one of the area's welcoming churches.
Let's go to some of our comments on our YouTube live stream. Reed says, election legal challenges thrown out for procedural hiccups and cowardice extortion from the political class to keep further potentially incriminating discovery from taking place. Tina says, Ron Paul is one of the few that has never sold out. But I want to go back to this story here about YouTube removing this new interview with President Trump, citing presidential election integrity. So they're going to probably do that. They're probably going to censor his speech at CPAC because he's not going to give up that claim that he has. And I don't care what political ideology you have. You cannot be okay with a total media collusion of an oligarch group of media outlets who can try to eliminate any kind of dissent. This is not acceptable. It's not okay. It's not just a mild inconvenience. This is a coordinated attack against freedom, the freedom to be wrong. And they say, oh, well, because if we allow him, their argument, their stupid argument is if we allow Trump to contest the election results, that it could stir up people to do violence. That's the little photo op thing that they've tried to brand into the low information mimetic mind, hive mind, right? But look at the 2016 claim they made. They made a preposterous, bogus, racist attack on Slavic people by attacking and disparaging and getting everybody to think of Russians as this boogeyman, totally dehumanizing millions and millions of people, including Russian Americans, with baseless accusations that Trump was colluding with Russia and that it was a hacked election. And all those same media outlets and all those social media groups all push that stuff to this day. And nothing happens to it. And that has triggered a lot of psychopaths to do vicious, hateful, and violent stuff. They tried to kill Steve Scalise and Rand Paul at the baseball game that the senators were engaged in and representatives, right? A nut Bernie Sanders bigot trying to shoot down those people. And many other situations. And what about, again, these folks say they're for racial reconciliation, they want racial justice, right? And yet, they have done nothing to stop Barack Obama using his Twitter platform and Facebook and other things back when he was in office to incite insurrection, violent chaos in countries like Egypt and Tunisia, countries like Syria. Yemen, Libya. So they show you by their actions that foreign black lives, foreign brown lives, foreign all lives don't matter to them when they don't have political power. You see how it works? DC says, hey, you're going to make a story out of this Capitol incident. You're going to associate that violence with anybody disputing the integrity of the dubious processes that took place in the 2020 election. Last minute rule changes, collusion fortification like Time Magazine talks about. You see? They want to eliminate anybody from dissenting from that. And they do so, and it reveals a bias that they don't actually care about foreign lives. And they don't actually care about the lives that don't have political power. You saw what Morning Joe Scarborough said on that show, where he says, you know, we don't care blank blank or whatever about the taco stand versus the Capitol building, referring to the violence that was done to private property holding businesses, oftentimes in minority communities, that's not as invaluable as the Capitol building. And that just reveals the religion that DC is owned by and worships, that they are better and they are more holy and they are more sacred. And if they want it to incite insurrection, mob chaos, the real kind that results in millions of people dying in Syria and Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan and all over the globe, wherever they want to have their power exerted, then they do it, don't they? They just get on right to it, don't they? And they don't censor it. They don't stop it. In fact, Joe Biden could get on there in a heartbeat and say, hey, I want to have regime change in Syria again. I'm going to incite chaos. I'm going to incite chaos over there. We're going to back some rebels in Al-Qaeda and ISIS or whatever we did last time. And that's okay. Because to Jack Dorsey's company and Mark Zuckerberg, those lives don't matter as much, you see? They don't have a lobby. They don't have power. They can't call them into the principal's room and say, Mr. Zuckerberg, I am a citizen in Damascus. You can't be inciting insurrection, mob violence in the streets just because you don't like the guy that's running our country. You can't do that. You're going to kill innocent lives. You're going to stoke political violence. You're going to harm innocent life. See, I destroy their entire foundation of their stupid logic with that one example. Because their whole thing is, well, we can take extraordinary steps to censor political conversation because it may provoke violence. But we know the track record of people like Biden and Hillary Clinton and Obama using their platforms on social media and using the newspapers to push and push and push for regime change chaos. And they're allowed to keep saying what they want to say because those lives don't matter to those folks. And that's shameful that there's that many bigots in the halls of media and then the halls of the social media companies that want to act like there are moral betters. That's sad because it has disastrous, deadly consequences. Because there's a lot of people that don't have a voice, and they're the ones that we're going to stand for. We're going to stand up for all human life that doesn't have a voice. People of color, every color, doesn't matter. We're not going to play games like they do. We're not going to get into their racist, disgusting bigotry. We're going to go beyond that. We're going to do better than that. We're going to get to the truth, which is that every human person's life matters. Every human life is sacred. And we're not going to allow Biden and his hateful bigots in D.C. to get away with bombing and harming people of color all over the globe and people in our own neighborhoods. We're not going to allow them to get away with that. They're going to be exposed for that. The truth will continue to come out and their stupid empire of lies will fall apart. It's time to tell the truth. It's time for America to face the facts and understand that this empire is not sustainable. We'll take a quick break and return with Hour 2 in just a moment, but for now, Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Golfing legend Tiger Woods, who broke records and threw race barriers in the sport and battled injuries and personal challenges in recent years, is now undergoing surgery following a car crash.
Tiger Woods' manager saying he's been in surgery for injuries to his legs. The LA County Sheriff's Department saying Woods had to be extricated. The crash happened on a windy road in Rancho Palos Verdes, a pricey area of southern LA County. Woods' vehicle on its side, it appears to have flipped maybe more than once. The airbags appear to have gone off. Woods was taken to a hospital via ambulance. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
A Senate joint hearing today on security lapses stemming from the Capitol siege. It includes new details that the FBI sent an alert the day before the attack, warning of potential violence. Former U.S. Capitol Police Chief Kevin Sund, who resigned after the riot, testified he did not see the memo then and defended the actions.
A clear lack of accurate and complete intelligence across several federal agencies contributed to this event, and not poor planning by the United States Capitol Police.
One of the suspects in the insurrection, a former NYPD officer, ordered held without bail today.
Former Marine and NYPD officer Thomas Webster was caught on video attacking a Capitol Police officer with a metal pole that used to fly the Marine Corps flag. It was, the judge said, conduct that shocks the conscience. With what prosecutors called pure rage, Webster gritted his teeth and unleashed expletives as he beat the officer like a junkyard dog before he ripped off the officer's protective gear. The defense cited Webster's resume of service to try and win his release on bail, but the judge said as a former cop, Webster would want someone who beat him with a flagpole held in jail. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
4 board leaders of the Texas power grid resigned today. It comes in the wake of the millions of power outages last week due to record cold. Later this week, President Biden will tour Houston to get a first-hand look. You're listening to ABC News.
This is an advertisement. Paid non-attorney spokesperson Ricky LeBlanc, admitted in Massachusetts only. Sokolov Law, LLC, Chestnut Hill, Mass. Paul J. Morgan, Winter Park, Florida. Greg Hobby, New Jersey. Michael Bro Gonzalez, admitted Louisiana. While this firm maintains joint responsibility, most cases of this type are referred to other attorneys for principal responsibility. Mesothelioma. If you know what mesothelioma is, you or someone you love has likely been affected by this devastating cancer. You may be entitled to compensation. Call Sokolov Law today. 1-800-578-2400. The only known cause of mesothelioma is asbestos exposure. Thousands of U.S. veterans and trade workers are at risk for the disease. Nearly $30 billion in court-ordered trusts has been set aside to pay money to asbestos victims. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, call now. You may be able to receive compensation without ever going to court or filing a lawsuit. Call for a free legal consultation at 1-800-578-2400. That's 1-800-578-2400. 1-800-578-2400.
New York's Attorney General deciding today not to charge the Rochester, New York police officers involved in the death of a black man. Body camera video showing officers holding down Daniel Prude last year, handcuffed until he stopped breathing. Emma Coronel, the wife of drug kingpin El Chapo Guzman, is staying in jail. Prosecutors say she helped her husband run his Sinaloa drug cartel.
According to federal documents, Coronel is charged with both conspiring with her husband to distribute drugs, including cocaine and heroin, and of conspiring with El Chapo to spring him from a Mexican supermax prison.
ABC's Matt Gutman, El Chapo serving a life sentence. The nation's top UN diplomat has now been confirmed.
President Joe Biden gets his 8th official confirmed to his cabinet. Linda Thomas Greenfield, a former U.S. diplomat for Africa, will now serve as President Joe Biden's ambassador to the United Nations. She received overwhelming bipartisan support and becomes the first black woman to be confirmed to Biden's cabinet. Andrew Dimbert, ABC News, Washington.
Jeep has responded to the criticism from the leader of the Cherokee Nation on using the name Cherokee for one of its vehicles. Principal Chief Chuck Hoshkin Jr. said he doesn't approve of having his tribe's name used in such a way. In a statement to ABC News, Jeep says the names for its vehicles have, quote, been carefully chosen over the years to honor and celebrate Native American people. This is ABC News.
Hello, friend Pat Boone here. Silver is creating lots of excitement. So I call my friends at Swiss America to get the scoop on whether this silver opportunity is for real. What I discovered blew my mind. It's all covered in a new silver report from Swiss America, which explains why silver prices cannot stay at this level for very long. Call 800-289-2646, 800-289-2646. Get a free copy of the silver report now.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Girdusky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A lot has happened that has prevented us from feeling like a community. Well, now that things have opened up a bit, let's get back to basics. As a foundation for our neighbors and family, God is a big part of bringing us together. It's time to get back to church, uplifting, supporting, and loving neighbors that are cherished, not only now, but for eternity. Come on, you can use it. The Welcoming Committee is there every Sunday. See you soon.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Girdusky. Welcome back to our second hour of today's broadcast. We're coming to you live on radio, podcast, video stream. Look at his story. MC Hammer, he rises to the moment, and you cannot touch this, what he has to offer. He has challenged, he's got a tweet that went viral. Somebody said, philosophy is flirtation with ideas. Science is commitment to truth, which is a very dumb, not even scientifically, it's not even what a scientist would say about science. It's just a process for how you discover truth. But a commitment to truth. But MC Hammer, he shut it all down. He said, you bore us, speaking as plural. If science is a commitment to truth, shall we cite all the historical non-truths perpetuated by scientists? Of course not. It's not science versus philosophy. It's science plus philosophy. Elevate your thinking and consciousness. When you measure, include the measurer. And it's just amazing to see. Sometimes you'll get some great banter out there on social media. Oftentimes it's just kind of a mess. I remember I referenced that language thing that the media is busy doing. Washington Post says first migrant facility for children opens under Biden. So they don't want to call it kids in cages anymore because their guy's in. So they're just going to lie to the same low information people that buy into their stuff to begin with. Here's another little screenshot of the new bill they're trying to pass, I guess, the new stimulus bill or something. It has a line in there for $1 billion for the CDC to strengthen vaccine confidence in the United States, to provide further information and education with respect to vaccines. So they got to market it to you. They want $1 billion of your own money to market to you why you should have this drug with total legal immunity and with no known information about what it does to things like fertility. That's just ridiculous. It's outrageous that that's even a thing. But that's what government does, and that's what people demand every day. More and more of that, please, on both sides. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr says the greatest threat to free speech in America today is not any law passed by the government. The First Amendment stands as a strong bulwark against that form of censorship by state action. The threat comes in the form of legislating by letterhead. Politicians have realized that they can silence the speech of those with different political viewpoints by public bullying. The letter sent by two senior Democrats on the House Energy and Commerce Committee to cable companies and other regulated entities, and the committee's own hearing this week on disinformation in the media are the latest examples. They are singling out selected newsrooms for their coverage of political events and sending a clear message that these media outlets will pay a price if they do not align their viewpoints with Democrat orthodoxy. That is a chilling transgression of free speech and journalistic freedom. No government official has any business inquiring about the moral principles that guide a private entity's decision about what news to carry. So they, that's what they, they're basically trying to go after these companies, these cable companies that continue to host cable news programs that do things like challenge the orthodoxy of Democrat policy, corporatism, corporate fascism, never-ending wars overseas, regime change, insurrection, chaos abroad, doing nothing about criminal justice reform here, destroying the economy with arbitrary minimum wage mandates, destroying our health care by telling us nothing about seed oils, but trying to make it impossible for us to eat healthy foods like meat, destroying our search for clean energy with giving us fake garbage green energy solutions that need to be subsidized with lots and lots of your money, bailing out banks, disarming the public. This is the stuff that Democrats, if you disagree with them, they want to eliminate your cable channel off of cable providers' lineup. That'll be the next thing. And they'll go after radio. They'll go after anything they can. Fairness doctrine, they'll bring it back in a heartbeat if they can, or something worse. Because they cannot stand dissent. That's what fascists are all about. That's what fascists are all about. They cannot they're so fragile, they're so insecure, they're so miserable, they're so slavishly worshiping of state power that they cannot handle even one little iota of dissent, of disagreement. So that's why they have these double standards where one side cannot ever challenge anything about the election integrity when the other side won. But the other side, whenever they lose, they're allowed to contest the election integrity. They can say, they can racistly attack an entire ethnic group and say they're the boogie men trying to destroy our elections and hack our elections. They're the same ones that basically, can attack the 2000 election and say that was dubious, and they get no pushback. But they will not allow dissent to people from people who actually don't fit in with their worldview. And that's just the hallmark of fascists. I don't like it that Conservative Inc. always wants to call this stuff socialist. It's not socialist, it's fascist. Get your words right, These people are just lame. They give the dumbest explanations for what's going on. And it's because they are part of the problem too. But it's fascism that we're dealing with. You think that AOC and Bernie Sanders want to eliminate all private business? No. They want certain private businesses to have collusion and relationships with government agencies micromanaging our lives with public-private partnerships to enact the Green New Deal or their infrastructure, build back better stuff, or their control of information, right? Control of healthcare. All of those things they want to do with a public-private partnership that squelches any dissent, any deviation from the party line. That's authoritarian fascism, if I've ever heard of it. And it's coming in America all around us. And the media is totally embracing it. 99% of the media seems to be totally on board with that. Except for folks like Glenn Greenwald. He looking at a picture of the Washington Post framing the story of first migrant facility for children opens under Biden. He says, "What an absolutely sweet and lovely way to describe immigration detention centers. Poetic almost. It's been a while since Trump was president, so my memory isn't perfect, but I vaguely recall a different phrase used back then. But that's the beauty of human language. It evolves. And it evolves oftentimes by people trying to wield it for power, to consolidate power, to gaslight people from dissent, and challenging their power. John Online says, if you are a keen observer of politics and its relationship with culture, you will notice how certain artists / intellectuals act as aesthetic apologists for the political status quo. These aren't just any intellectuals, but rather they are people who have a body of work that speaks to and is enjoyed by a bulk of the masses. This kind of celebrity political alignment is no accident. It heavily relies on mutually shared interests and, above all, on interests emerging from a highly mimetic population. The skeptical observer will often call these celebrities useful idiots, but these are useful idiots who serve an important purpose for the state. They create artificial hunger among the middle class, and this hunger often desires state intervention of some kind. Celebrities serve in these positions because most people relate to narratives and archetypes. They cater to man's ancient yearning for myths. This shows how enormous the arts are, despite us claiming to live in a scientific world. And he has a picture of Barack Obama with Bruce Springsteen in the new little podcast, documentary, whatever, and Maxim Gorky with Joseph Stalin. Now the dumb, low information person who's conditioned by the media say, "Are you saying that Obama is as bad as Stalin?" No one's saying that, but that's what low resolution minds do. They cannot understand points. They can't understand nuance. They have to always make things stupid, binary. Oh, that means if the same image is in there, therefore they're the exact same. Is that what you're saying? No. But it's the same functional use of using art to sell evil. Barack Obama did a lot of evil. He did a lot of evil. There are millions of people who are dead or severely screwed up because of Barack Obama's actions in the world. Wrote a book about dreams of my father and the audacity of hope, and then he had the audacity to drop a lot of hopeful bombs where he shouldn't have onto innocent civilians. He had a lot of audacity to starve innocent Yemeni children that Trump continued on. He had a lot of audacity to arm Al-Qaeda, to do a lot of horrible things to people, because he's a fool who does whatever the establishment tells him to. So I guess that's not a fool from a Machiavellian nihilist perspective. That's a very smart person to do that. But it's a fool in terms of wisdom and in terms of God's perspective about what it means to live a life that is righteous and whole. This is a man who has done a lot of evil, a lot of horrible stuff. He did nothing for criminal justice. He did nothing for real clean energy. He directed a lot of attention towards failed ideas like Solyndra instead of real solutions like low temperature nuclear reactions. So he's a total corporatist, a corporate fascist. And of course, they get to have all the celebrities, Bruce Springsteen and everybody, trying to sell low information people on how nice it is and how sweet and kind it is to go along with corporate fascist policies. But it's not going to work. That's why we're in an interesting time where these cathedrals of information and art and entertainment are starting to fall apart all around us. We'll take a break and return after this short break.
David Girdusky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Here's a story in MSN.com. It says misogynistic, sexist, and a bit rapey. That's the description for Grease. There are calls for iconic movie Grease to be banned. So that's the next thing. Social media users are calling to ban the iconic 1970s hit film Grease, condemning it for being sexist, homophobic, and whatever, shaming it. I don't know. A Boxing Day viewing of the film on BBC One sparked outrage online, with many Twitter users calling the film outdated. Grease is on. It really has a terrible message, doesn't it? And so they want to cancel that now. This is what people fight about when you become a decadent empire that doesn't believe in anything powerful. No cures for cancer, but we'll talk about banning Grease and the Muppets. Oh, what else are we going to ban? How about, Jeep Cherokee? Jeep pushed to retire the Cherokee name from SUVs. Cherokee Nation wants Jeep to stop using its name to sell the firm's classic sports vehicles. Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. said it's time for companies and sports teams to retire Native American iconography from logos, mascots, and other products. They don't want to be anywhere on anything. Apparently, that's what this guy's saying. Jeep has sold vehicles under the name since the 1970s. The current make is one of its most popular vehicles. They said the name has been, quote, carefully chosen, but was committed to dialogue. It does not honor us, was the thought. The article says, amid widespread Black Lives Matter protests last summer, food companies such as PepsiCo say they would overhaul certain products after criticism that its brands relied on racist tropes. It's interesting how, it's not a coincidence that those protests happen in the pressure cooker environment of a plague. Plagues historically create mob phenomena and revolutionary moments. And that leads me to what commenter Reed says online. He says, Build Back Better is a slogan from the glossary of the World Economic Forum Great Reset agenda to take control of planetary food, energy, and financial systems to enable full control of humanity by technocrats. Now, when you hear a statement like that, you can easily say, oh, that sounds conspiratorial, right? But think about it. take control of planetary foods. Bill Gates says 100% meat needs to be banned. Western rich countries need to have a 100% ban on red meat. And I believe red meat and ruminant animal meat and things like that are foundational to the best type of health imaginable. But they want to have a 100% ban. So when he's buying up all this farmland, what's he going to do? Make, plant goop burgers as a replacement? Now, energy. They want to take control of energy, the commenter claims. Well, is that not the case? Is that not the case? They want to have carbon credits and all these scam things. They want to have these solar panel companies and wind farms. And there's nothing wrong with the technology in and of itself, but the idea that you can force all these different major economies to forcibly use these unreliable, renewable technologies that simply cannot put out the consistent level of energy production that's required to, to maintain what we have today. And they require massive government subsidies to make it all work. It's a huge, huge racket for the same companies oftentimes who profit from the current rigged energy sector to act like they're righteous by switching over to cleaner, so-called cleaner solutions, which actually are just going to clean your pocketbook through taxation subsidy. And then he says financial systems to enable full control of humanity. Well, a lot of those folks, they want to have, they don't want to have cash. You saw folks saying, oh, we got a coin shortage. Remember that during the COVID stuff? Is that still going on? Oh, coin shortage. Watch out. They've always hated cash. There's obviously governments are looking at how they can create a digital token. There's talks of having a health certificate, digital passport that has all your vaccines like an animal certificate. What do you got? Your 16th shot, all this stuff. So they want to have all that scanned in there, and then they're going to probably want to push a way to tie that to a digital token or something like that. So, I mean, that's not, outlandish to say that. It's not outlandish to think about that. So you see that all around. Build Back Better includes getting rid of Jeep Cherokee. It's like a cultural renaissance that they want to force, right? It's not a renaissance. They want to force a cultural transformation. All your logos, all your movies, all your way of talking, your ability to talk about elections, your ability to get out and go to a brick and mortar store, your ability to, rise up to Wall Street, short fund company, short hedge funds, all this stuff. We're going to build it back better. We're going to consolidate power. We're going to get you watching Netflix all day. We're going to put warning signs on Muppets and probably eliminate that eventually. It's an attempt to try to fast forward people into a more controlled, corporate, fascist, globalized system where things could be managed a little easier. No meat. They don't want meat. They're going to vilify it. They're going to ramp it up, hate and attacks against me. They've been doing it for decades, getting people sick on toxic seed oils. And we just got to be able to realize that this is something that is going to be a heck of a fight. But it's going to require folks from all different perspectives and backgrounds to join in the fight, intellectual fight. Can't just be a Republican versus Democrat thing. It's not that at all. It's way bigger than that. It's going to require the vast majority of the world's population to fight against their attempts to tie medical tyranny into our ability to travel and talk and express things. We're going to fight for our right to eat what we want. But all this comes back to, you could have listened to Ron Paul back in Morton Downey, and he's talking about government doesn't have the right to tell you what to do, and everybody laughs and screams and yells. You don't have to let it get to this horrible part, to this level of evil and tyrannical control like we're facing now. We should have done this a long time ago. But we got to start at some point, so let's give it our shot now. Take a news break and return with Ryan Girdusky, a journalist who exposed and destroyed the Lincoln Project with his revelations. Back in a moment.
Politics these days are just that, politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter, while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida.
Tiger Woods is in a Southern California hospital after he was involved in a single car crash in Southern California. ESPN senior golf writer Bob Herrig has more.
He needed to be taken in an ambulance to the hospital. His agent said he's in surgery. He reported multiple injuries to his leg or legs. We don't know exactly to what extent. Obviously, it's not good no matter what.
Authorities expected to provide an update next hour. ABC's Alex Stone is in Los Angeles. At this point, our sources are telling us it is not a DUI investigation, that there was nothing on scene indicating intoxication, that it could have been anything else, speed down the windy road or distraction. They're working to figure that out now. Also, originally, the sheriff's department had said the jaws of life were used. Firefighters say they were not used. They used an axe and another tool to remove the windshield and didn't need the jaws of life. Woods is 45 years old. Brian Clark, ABC News.
Hello, David Girdusky here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. And we have now a guest with us. He is someone who's been in the news lately for his story he broke regarding the Lincoln Project and what's been going on with that organization. We have journalist and author Ryan Girdusky with us. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the program. Now, I want folks to know a little bit of background here. Tell us, what is the Lincoln Project? You know, some folks who are not as into the political world may not actually be aware of what that group's all about.
The Lincoln Project is a super PAC created in 2019, basically made up of anti-Trump Republicans. George Conway, Steve Schmidt, Rick Wilson are kind of the more well-known members. So they also include other people like Mike Madrid and John Weaver. They're well-known Republican political consultants who work primarily for Rudy Giuliani, George W. Bush, and John McCain. And they formed in 2019 against Donald Trump and trying to not only beat Donald Trump, but beat 7 other Senate Republicans, including Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, and Susan Collins.
And do they have a uniting philosophy that guides their disagreement with Trump, or is it just all kinds of...
Basically, I mean, there's not that he's crass and unfit for office, and that Republicans have traded their old beliefs of limited government and liberty and fiscal responsibility for the cult of Trumpism is what they firmly believe.
But they all happen to be pretty much pro-war too, right? Kind of interventionist foreign policy.
Oh yeah, they're all pro-war. Yes, they are all pro-war. They all supported McCain, Giuliani, and Bush. So I mean, that should really tell you what their political philosophy is.
And how much did they raise in this last election here?
Over $90 million. Wow. Oh, sorry, 87 million, close to 90 million.
Wow. And so now what? Now we go into your story here. Tell us a little bit about what you uncovered in the whole situation with that.
So during the summer of July 2020, John Weaver, one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project, followed me on Twitter, which is, thousands of people follow me on Twitter. So it was I didn't really mean much to me. And then unbeknownst to me, several young men started reaching out to me, telling me that John Weaver follows young men, offering them jobs and mentorships and internships in exchange for sex. And this is what happened to them. So I started building a story around this back in July. I was working with the New York Post at the time, trying to build this story. And as we're going closer to publication date, John Weaver had a heart attack. And it was very difficult when dealing with a sexual assault story, especially with young men, to get someone on record. In order to publish a story, we needed someone on record. We couldn't use people on background alone. So the story kept on getting pushed back and back and back, and ultimately kind of died. So finally in January, when the Lincoln Project announced they were going to start holding Trump officials accountable for the actions of Donald Trump, even though they had nothing to do with it whatsoever, they were going to make a database of everyone who worked for the Trump campaign, Trump White House, and basically make a blacklist where they follow them for the rest of their professional career. So I up-tweeted it, and I said, well, maybe then I should talk about the Lincoln Project co-founder who's promising jobs for sex with young men his wife would probably like to know. From there, I didn't have anyone on the record yet, which has always been the problem with the story. Luckily, once I started tweeting that out, young men came out on the record and saying that it was John Weaver and this is what happened to them. So that was on January 9th. My story came out on January the 11th. Another reporter named Scott Stedman's story came out January the 11th. And it broke the entire story open and called him out for being a predator. And the Lincoln Project was utterly silent about this. And then on January the 15th, a reporter from Axios did a story where they did an absolute puff piece, a garbage puff piece, basically where he gave the Kevin Spacey response that he was gay and it was troubling, but every conversation he had was consensual and he was leaving the Lincoln Project. The Lincoln Project said that speaks for itself. Enough's not, that's the end of that. Kind of hoping the story would die. And it did for a few weeks until the New York Times reported that the young men's ages were as young as 14 years old. I only had adults in my reporting. The New York Times really broke it open where there was actual minors involved. And at that point, the Lincoln Project was incensed. They were furious at him. And then, but they said they didn't know anything. This is a complete shock until the story came out, which was their main talking point until the Associated Press reported that, in fact, they knew all the way into back in August. And then another reporter from the New Yorker magazine actually said they knew as early as in March. And Amanda Becker from a publication called The 19th said that they actually not only knew, but junior members knew, and multiple people came up to the Lincoln Project co-founders and said, this was happening. But they were working on a grift. I mean, of the $87 million, $50 million found its way back into firms controlled by Lincoln Project co-founders. When the article came out on January 31st in the New York Times, Steve Schmidt actually paid off his home or Rick Wilson rather paid off his home immediately, 16 years ahead of schedule, because they knew they were going to start having some serious financial difficulties keeping the script going. Anyway, one of the co-founders following the New Yorker story, Jennifer Horn, left, the only female co-founder and the former head of the New Hampshire Republican Party. She left the organization on January, right after the New Yorker story came out. And she cited John Weaver, and they attacked her, saying she actually demanded $250,000 in salary plus her own podcast. Then they tweeted hacked direct messages that came out of Jennifer Horn's Twitter from that she was contacting a reporter named Amanda Becker. That's a violation of federal law, and George Conway was actually the one to sit there and say this is a violation of federal law. After that, Anna Dodd, which did all their online fundraising, they canceled working with them. A number of people stopped working with them almost immediately, and co-founders started dropping out of the Lincoln Project left and right. Now they are, and Steve Schmidt, one of their main co-founders, also left the organization. So now, I mean, they're definitely a wounded animal. They're not completely gone yet, but they certainly are not in the position they were in. Members of the Lincoln Project, Rick Wilson had his podcast on pause from the Daily Beast. Steve Schmidt is no longer a contributor at MSNBC. It's definitely not what it was before my story came out.
So that's quite a number on them. So they knew about the underage kid stuff too before?
No. I don't believe they knew about the underage kid. I think that was a shock to them, as it was a shock to me. I mean, I was working on the story for 7 months. I never heard of anyone underage. But once I heard about the first underage kid, it wasn't that long until I found out about a second one.
And that was just one individual with the group, or other people in the group too?
That was just John Weaver.
Yeah. So now,
but there was definitely, according to all the reporting, they definitely not only knew about it, but were trying to figure out a way to kind of kill the story and get rid of it. And they knew that people were working on the story too.
Mm-hmm. I wonder why the New York Times did that story.
Because it was a good story. I think that it was an excellent story. And the Lincoln Project was after the election. I would have done it before the election, but I couldn't get someone on the record. The Lincoln Project, once they, are of no help, as has happened many, many times in the past, where Republicans attack, Republican candidates for president. They're short-lived liberal celebrities, and then once the campaign's over, they are thrown away. I mean, Valerie Plame was one. You can go down the list and find examples of that behavior.
Mm-hmm. So, what are some of the lessons that can be learned from this moment? Because this is a spectacular implosion by an organization that had seems like a big impact in the last election and kind of in the internal.
Well, the thing is that they really didn't have a big impact. Actually, Republicans voted more for Trump in 2020 than they did in 2016, and all 7 other Senate candidates lost. Won re-election. All the candidates they were running against won re-election. It was a grift, and I think that there are 2 lessons to be learned. One, if you are a donor to candidates and to campaigns, be very suspect of ever giving to a super PAC, because, and I've run super PACs in the past, but many of them are grifts, and many of them just steal money and all publicly available information. And then the second thing is that there's institutions of power that protect against abuse. MSNBC and CNN had on founders of the Lincoln Project, co-founders, over 20 times from the time that I broke my reporting to the New York Times broke their reporting, and they never questioned it once. Mm-hmm. So I think the question of institutional power, protecting institutional power, is something that is significant, and it's a very key part of the story. And the other thing is to watch where you give money to when it comes to politics.
Mm. Very true. I want to shift gears with you just a little bit while I still have you. Talk about your book a little bit. They're Not Listening: How the Elites Created the National Populist Revolution. And
yes,
just want to get a little.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, just tell us a little bit about the book, and then I want to get into CPAC and what you're looking to see come out of that event. So,
well, I'm not going to CPAC, so I'll talk about my book.
Yeah.
The thing about my book is the book basically follows the rise of national populism across the globe from the late 90s all the way to 2019, because basically the media and many people in academia and the political circles in Washington, D.C. said if you're a Trump supporter or if you believe in the idea of America first, you're really an outsider. You're an outcast. You're usually an old boomer from a dying town, and your ideas should not be or never be taken seriously. When in fact, this revolution against the managerial decline of the West and neoliberalism has been going around for decades, and it's been successful in countries, in the late 90s, like Switzerland, Denmark, and Hungary. And in the 2000s, you saw it in India, you saw it in Australia, you saw it in Angola, Brazil, Chile, Quebec, Italy, the UK. Countries that have very little actually to do with each other. They don't have the same racial background, the same religious background, not even the same. They're democracies, but that's about basically it. Mm-hmm. So why is there this movement against neoliberalism, against globalism, and the demand for nationhood, the demand for greater sovereignty, the greater control over yourselves and your governing abilities? It tells the story of what issues mobilize and carry people from very different backgrounds to all pushing for the same thing.
Mm. So what do you think in that vein is the future of this, in this moment? You have last week was the passing of Rush Limbaugh, which is a, larger than life individual who had a huge impact on the conservative movement and Republican Party. And then you have, this coming Sunday will be the return of Donald Trump in his first public speech since leaving office. Where do you see things headed right now in this moment?
Well, I think the question is, what if there is an America First movement? It has to be more than just Trump. I voted for Trump 3 times. I'm not criticizing Trump from the perspective of being a Trump hater, like in the Lincoln Project. I'm coming from one of someone who was a supporter of his, but it can't just be him. And I think that people need to find other candidates, from state legislators to, but we're having a different conversation in politics than we had years ago. You have state legislators talking about ending critical race theory. You have, a very serious anti-war part of the right that exists now, like people like Matt Gaetz and Rand Paul. You have, serious conversations on immigration restrictionism that would have never happened during the Bush administration. And I think that is all very, very important, and people kind of are opening up their eyes. And you have a new working class coalition. I mean, from 2010 to 2020, the Republican Party increased their support among working class people of every skin tone there was. And we have a serious conversation over the regulations of big tech in a way that would have never happened even 5 years ago. So I think that it's moving in the right direction. We kind of just need more leaders who kind of get it on a fuller background. And right now we have a bunch of people who get it on, here and there. Rubio, for example, Senator Rubio is very good on some family policy. Senator Romney is very good on some family policy. Congressman Jim Banks was very good on China. Tom Cotton's very good on immigration. Senator Hawley on some big tech stuff, but we don't have someone who has the full package yet. And I think we're waiting for someone to kind of bring together the full package again.
What do you think is the heart of that whole philosophy, that the top issue or what have you, the biggest priority? I mean,
immigration would be the number one issue. I think that moves people forward. I think that when you have a country where you're bringing in 1.2 million, right, pre-COVID per year, and you have a loss of social capital, greater social anxieties among all people, and you have to do this thing where you make tens of millions of people into a single American country. That only happened once beforehand when we did that in the 1920s, when we had 11% of the population being immigrants like we do now. And we had a 50-year, basically, immigration moratorium where we went through 2 world wars, we went through depression, we went through a recovery, we went through the 1950s and 60s together, and we became one American people. But it took a long time and a lot of work. It's going to take another thing like that. So I think immigration is the main point of it, but it's also, stop sending our kids to die in these stupid foreign wars that last forever. It's about stop sending our jobs overseas and stop believing that the market is the be-all, end-all of everything. The market is a tool, not a religion. And I think that a lot of Republicans forgot that for a long time. But certainly people are having those conversations now that didn't happen, and they're more and more commonplace.
Well, Ryan Girdusky, I really appreciate you coming on our program, and people can check out your book, They're Not Listening, How the Elites Created the National Populist Revolution, which is available online for sale. And do you have a website or anything you'd like to point people to as well?
RyanGirdusky.com.
Well, very good. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll return in just a moment after this short break. Stay with us or send me an email, hello@aneighborschoice.com. We'll get to some of your comments when we return.
Hello, this is David Girdusky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you, Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Feeling lonely? You don't need to. There are friends in your community looking to be part of your life. Where are they? At your local church, of course. It's time to start getting back together for support, love, and friendship. There's no better place to do that than at your church. Make a plan this Sunday to be at one of the area's welcoming churches. You'll not regret it. The welcoming committee is there every Sunday. See you soon.
YouTube listener says food is only as healthy as ecosystem that it is grown in. This is verifiable in the micronutrient content. Regenerate systems like Joe Salatin of Polyface Farms or Strip It of Life with monocrops. So the idea is that our health is related to the way we grow our foods. If we grow our foods in a way that continually strips the soil of nutrients, then we're never going to be able to have nutritious food that will support our body and our thriving. So that's something that we have to continue to be aware of as we navigate this time where people are really concerned about new viruses and everything else. Talking about Build Back Better, they don't know the first thing about what makes for good health, building good health. But it also reminds me of a book that I've engaged by Wayne Jonas, medical doctor, and he's the author of a recent book called How Healing Works. And I'm going to be having him on my show because, as you know, we do a lot of content on our website and social media for health with a lot of the best experts and doctors in these fields. And this week we have a interview coming out with Peter Dobromilski of Hyperlipid, who has pioneered a fantastic insight into the cause of obesity, tying it back to seed oils and reactive oxidative species, which you want to check out that video. We'll have it available at aneighborschoice.com. You could also subscribe on our podcast feed for the audio version of that. But that'll be out soon. And we'll also have a discussion with Tucker Goodrich, who is another leading champion of the breakthrough information coming out with the science that shows that seed oils really are at the heart of so much of our problems in our health today. So don't miss that. But you can always count on aneighborschoice.com for all that content. So we have our radio show, A Neighbor's Choice. That's what you're listening to right now, our daily radio show, which is available online as well as a podcast or video stream. Then we have our podcast, Things Hidden, which is online only, Things Hidden. And that's where we get into deeper dive stuff related to history and the personhood revolution of Jesus. We get into ethics and anthropology. And then we also have the health series. I think I'm going to have to come up with a title to describe our different health-related discussions too, because we've got so many great, amazing discussions that it probably deserves its own category and its own group for that series. But I want to read this introduction from Wayne Jonas, MD, who we'll be having. I'm going to try to get him on here soon as well. He says, most of the treatments we think produce healing do not work when exposed to rigorous scientific scrutiny. Yet people often get better. Why? How? And he goes on to say some facts. Only 20% of healing comes from the treatment agent that the doctor applies to you, whether that is surgery, drugs, acupuncture needles, herbs and supplements, diet, or anything else external to you. A full 80% of healing comes from constructing a meaningful treatment response, unique to you, which is internal and highly personal, using simple principles and components. You can activate your own inherent healing processes and get your physician and others on board to help accelerate your healing journey, making any approach more effective, safer, and less expensive. And these processes can prevent the majority of chronic diseases in the future. He says, I am not arguing, as some others do, that you can simply think yourself into healing, and I am well aware that understanding what stimulates healing or prevents disease will not fix a broken bone, cure cancer, or stop a heart attack. However, the top 10 reasons for seeing a doctor, according to a study by the Mayo Clinic, include pain, especially back pain, fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, chronic heart or lung problems, or brain diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or depression. Almost all of these conditions accelerate and increase as we age. So even if you feel healthy now, chances are if you live long enough, you'll get more than one of these conditions unless you seek out ways to prevent them. If you understand how healing really works for the most common chronic conditions, you can take greater control of your own recovery, increase the likelihood that any specific treatment will be effective, prevent many of the diseases of aging, and radically reduce your dependence on the medical industry. So that's what his premise of his book is, and we're going to get into these questions with him when I have him on my show, hopefully here in the near future. But that's the kind of stuff that we want to dive in together. You know, we're not going to do just politics only. I tell you this, but we're not just going to do that. We're going to get into things like healing and health, medicine, breakthroughs in nutrition, breakthroughs in other topics of science related to our life, because we have to equip each other with proper information. And if your mindset and the environment around you has a lot to do with how healing works, then maybe we might want to think about that when we try to talk about Build Back Better and a new normal in which kids are supposed to be isolated from any kind of social contact, any kind of normal, sane way of living. Maybe we need to really rethink some of our principles of healing when they want to destroy our entire way of life and keep people isolated for years and years because of political calculation or whatever. It's just time to really get back to basics, folks. And that means take care of our health, take care of our finances, stay out of debt, stay out of the negativity of the political media, turn off these garbage entities that want to keep us talking about bad ideas and failed ideology. It's okay to have disagreement, but not stewing on failed politicians all the time. So that's what we can do. Take care of the things that we can take care of. I'm always going to stress that. Take care of the things that are around us. You can take care of your health, take care of your finances, educate yourself, get out of government school, get your family out of government school if they're in there. Get your kids out of that stuff. Government school is a disaster. It's a failed experiment, Pavlovian experience. It needs to be something we move away from. And also, we need to move beyond our failed paradigm of nutrition science. That's what I'm doing, because I'm not going to let these people make us always reacting to their stupid stuff. We also have to be proactive. You could see that a lot of talk radio and stuff, they're just reacting. Oh yeah, mass mandates, those are bad, but you have nothing proactive to offer people. Because they're like, well, I don't know enough about the other stuff like seed oils and stuff to talk. Well, we'll get informed enough to know. And you don't have to be an expert, but you should have experts on to help you work it out together and figure out the truth. Recognize that when they say ban red meat, that's an assault on your family's health. That's an assault on your family's autonomy. It's an assault on your dignity. It's an assault on human species itself. Don't let them push you around into this dystopian, disgusting nightmare they want to push. It's your body. It's your choice whether you want to eat meat. And that's what we have to be guided by, the fact that we have to respect other people's choices and show mercy on our neighbors, even when we disagree with the things that they do. That's what it means to be an adult. I'm David Girdusky. Godspeed.
your home for news, talk, and information.